Hi, everybody. It's Aluna Michaels coming at you to talk about January of 2022. Oh, Aluna Michaels, Esoteric Astrologer. And I want to begin by saying thank you to the Know Thyself podcast, guys. Thank you so much for talking about me, promoting me. I really appreciate it. Sending me really cool people for sessions. So a lot to talk about, but well, it's a few things, but it's a little bit interconnected. So I want to be able to explain this stuff to you. So, first of all, let's talk about Jupiter and Pisces. I can't remember if I talked about that at the end of or in December, but Jupiter changed into Pisces at the very end of December, the 28th, 29th. And Jupiter has a 12-year orbit, so it stays in a sign for a whole year. And if you follow how it moves through your houses, it can move, stay in a house for 12 months as well, generally. But Jupiter going into Pisces, like Jupiter is connected to Pisces in a certain way. Before we discovered Neptune, Pisces was connected to Jupiter. It still has a connection, but it's forgiving, it's open, it's creative. I mean, Jupiter always is, whatever sign it's in, really, because it's Jupiter's deal. But when it's in Pisces, it's especially so, especially compassionate, especially forgiving. It's kind of like taking a deep breath, So that's lovely that we've got that going on. Now it's full. Now that we're in January, it's full on, that it's moving forward. And actually, it moves forward really fast, that it will pop into Aries, but that's in a few months, and then it goes back into Pisces. But for the most part, all through 2022, it's in Pisces. So there's that. But let's talk about, there's this very interesting dance going on between the Mercury retrograde that's coming up this month and the Venus retrograde that started in December but is still going on. So I hope I don't confuse you with this, but here we go. Okay, so let's just backtrack to the Venus retrograde. So we know that Pluto is in Capricorn, right? And Pluto stays in a sign for 15 to 30 years, depending on where it is in its orbit, because it has an elliptical orbit rather than an oval or circle. And it just it like whips around the corners, so it goes faster, kind of like that ride, the whip, where you go on in the amusement park or something. And so it kind of wings around the edges, and then the long part it stays slower. But anyways, Pluto's in a certain sign for a long time. So there's Pluto in Capricorn. Now Venus, when it did turn retrograde in Capricorn, which it did like the week before Christmas, like on the 19th of December, it was right next to Pluto when it did that. Okay, so let me just check something out too. Okay. So then the Venus went retrograde, which it's still retrograding now, through January. The very end of January, it's going to go forward, but then it won't pass Pluto again until early March. So this whole Venus retrograde has just kind of an extra intensity to it. Venus is about what we find really important. I said a lot of this last month, but especially when it's in Capricorn, because Venus is our value system, but it also can be what we do to enjoy life and how we, feel fulfilled and stuff. But especially within the planet Capricorn is especially about holding your own boundaries, making a schedule or a time for yourself to be enjoying yourself. And when it's next to Pluto, as it's sort of coloring this whole retrograde phase from, we could even say it started even in November, but I don't want to confuse you more, but it's this kind of big chunk of time till early March, about like that it's vital. Pluto is a sense of kind of life and death in a way. And Pluto can also represent toxicity or difficult partnerships when it's Venus, or ways that you are toxic to yourself, like could be overeating or overspending, could be Venus gone wrong kind of a thing, and Pluto says, why are you doing this? Why are you making your life harder for yourself? Why are you hurting yourself instead of nurturing yourself, But it can also be about relationship, like negative relationship patterns and being able to break that, or negative spending or going into debt, or credit cards or whatever. It could be Venus with Pluto, but it's kind of got this intensity about like, I want to be joyful, and how, and what are the steps I need to take, because it's in Capricorn, to do this. Now, so that's going on, right? Now we're going to have the Mercury retrograde, which, I never try to have you guys worry about, because Mercury, any planet going retrograde is about interior. That's why I think with that Venus retrograde, it's like, how do I nurture myself and all of that. But the Mercury retrograde is, how do I communicate within myself? And it's kind of a checkpoint. You know, we have the Mercury retrograde about 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. And so Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 13th of January. It will go direct on February 3rd. But when it goes direct, it's actually going to retrograde in Aquarius and retrograde back into Capricorn. And when it goes forward, it's right at Pluto. It's right conjuncting Pluto, the same as Pluto, which was also that Venus retrograding point. So this Venus and the Mercury are real connected. It's like, you know, I really, really, really want to get through to myself about, you know, what my stand for is. And so even though it's retrograding in Aquarius, when it goes back into Capricorn, it's hitting that same point that the Venus went retrograde. It's even if you're not a Capricorn or have planets in Capricorn, it's a theme saying like, I really got to pay attention to this stuff. Now, Mercury being communication, and again, Pluto, this idea of toxicity, like toxic thoughts, and being able to refurbish yourself, to rejuvenate yourself. Pluto is like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So being able, and I'm very into neuroplasticity, the fact that we can change our brains from changing our thoughts, and we change even our inflammation levels, or, you know, all different body markers for stressors. You know, their thoughts are carriers, or even create a cascade of stress hormones or not, you know. And so the Mercury Pluto could be a time when you really dig up those toxic thoughts. And you know, I have a friend, Marion, sending her a big kiss. A while back, she was doing this little practice about, you know, when I think a negative thought, I'm going to think 3 positive thoughts. And I don't know where she got that from, but that's a great thing to do, counteract it, kind of makes sense. But I was reading in a book, it's called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, or Clean Up Your Mental Mess by Carolyn Leaf. And they actually did some neuroscience exercises about that and experiments about people when they have that one negative thought, and then how many thoughts it takes to counteract and then override the negative cascade that happens when you have the negative thought or the traumatic thought or whatever, which isn't about like wiping it away, but it's about being able to get your brain and body back in balance. And I saw that the 3 thoughts started to drive the brain toward a different neuroplastic thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But so the idea that you're not only uprooting stuff or saying no to it, you're saying yes in a new way, and you're building a sense of resilience, which is also a part of Pluto. So that whole thing with this Mercury, Pluto, Venus, Pluto, and again, this is probably even stronger for you if you are a Capricorn or have Moon in Capricorn, Capricorn rising, different planets in Capricorn. It's going to be even more important for you, but everybody, it's kind of a theme because of this doubling down with this Mercury, Pluto, Venus, Pluto thing. Now, the other thing is the actual Mercury going retrograde. Let me say this first. The planet Uranus, which has an 84-year orbit, and again stays in a sign for a long time, 7 years, and it's the ruler of Aquarius, and we also call it the higher octave of Mercury, whereas, you know, Mercury is, hey, you know, what movie was Robert De Niro in? It's about a boxer. You say, oh, Raging Bull, or something. I don't know why that first came to my head. But that's Mercury. I think it, I remember it. But Uranus is, you go on Internet Movie Database, you see every movie that he's in and when he made it and the facts around it. And it's like, whoa, because Uranus is like the higher supercharged knowledge, okay? So the planet Uranus is going to be moving forward. Now, the outer planets are retrograde 6 months out of the year, you know, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, basically, more or less. And so it's not a big deal if they are retrograde, but when it changes direction, that's really powerful. So here's Uranus, this higher mind planet in Aquarius, its own sign, moving forward. And as it does that, this is sort of weird, the planet Mercury is in Aquarius and going backwards at the same degree, the same point. So it's a lot of mind stuff, you know, and also the planet Saturn is right in there. So as much as Uranus is about setting yourself free and having aha moments and Mercury going retrograde is about this interior aha moment stuff. Saturn can sometimes reveal to you what's the most depressing or what's the most limiting. Also, Saturn can make something more long lasting because sometimes Uranus and Mercury are like, well, that was a cool thought. Oh, next thing, you know. So the fact that the Mercury is going to retrograde as Uranus is the breakthrough thing going forward, Mercury retrograde is making it interior, and then there's the Saturn right there in Aquarius at the same point, saying, let's really think about this. Let's really like make this like say if it was, you know, the dealing with your thought stuff. I really want to do this as a life change, you know, and as something I'm really working with. And then again, the fact that it goes back into Capricorn and sits with Pluto, it's like this stuff is really profound. That and the other thing I want to say about, especially with the Saturn Mercury retrograde thing, that the small things can really matter. I mean, on one level, Saturn can be like bummer stuff or like, here's this negative thought I have. But when it says, wow, look at the implications of that thought. And I could really take daily steps to eradicate that and create more resilience in myself and really overcome it. But it's the small, consistent steps. So Saturn doesn't just try to bum you out. It's like, this isn't good for you, you know? And to try to see that if you like made a list of your negative thoughts and said, these are the things I want to tackle. And that book, Clean Up Your Mental Mess, is really interesting. She has a 63-day program that's all brain science research now. She had a different book where it was kind of like going on faith, I suppose, or she didn't have the research ready, and it was a 21-day thing. But to really see, like, there's a lot of different ways we can work with our thoughts. You know, you probably already have your favorite way to do it, but to say, I'm going to commit to doing this and take a small bite to say, instead of like, oh, all this stuff is wrong with me, it's like, all right, what's the thing that really stands out, or the thing I want to tackle, or the thing that feels maybe not the worst one, but the most doable one, and say, which I'm just going to do one thing. I'm going to look at that thought, you know, and stay consistent with it. That could be a wonderful way to work with these retrograde patterns right now. So, and then the last thing I was going to say, I don't know if you need more, but the full moon we're going to have in January is at the same point. Well, the sun and Pluto are here in Capricorn, and the moon is in Cancer, opposite Pluto. So it's that same 26, 27 degrees. That is the Venus retrograde point. That's the Mercury going direct point. So it's like, oh, really? I'll put a full moon there. Okay. So it's really like underlining this point of time to say we can transform ourselves, stay consistent with it. You know, maybe having a person who's just as committed to personal growth so you can help each other, because part of this growth cycle, of course, any growth cycle, is that it can seem really slow. And somebody else would say, no, you're making big changes. I can see how you're shifting, how this is working. So you don't just say, it's not working, I don't want to do it. But that could be helpful to someone who's as committed. And again, even if it's a small thing, you know, if we think about New Year's resolutions, but if it was a certain thought and say, you know, who would I be if I didn't have this thought, or I wasn't able to think this thought anymore? And how do I not suppress it, but even deal with the roots of it, as a lot of Pluto is pulling it up. So, but knowing you have power over that thought and you can pull it up. And one thing that Saturn can also represent is a sense of, it's kind of like distance, but I guess I'd say, so what do I want? Like realistic approach to it, where it's kind of like a scientific study, you know, and because this is a fact, this thought bothers me, or this, you know, habit I have, or whatever, and not be judgy, but just say it's no good, you know, or it doesn't serve me, you know, and so you don't have like emotional judgment or fear around it. It can be just sort of like, this is this, and so that in a way Saturn can be really helpful if you get past like, oh, it's showing me this thing, you know. So I think overall this is like a driving force about, you know, overcoming and knowing that we do have personal power, is that main thing that Pluto can leave us with, you know, and be able to grasp that power and utilize it. So, okay, that was a lot. So if you want to get a session with me, alunamichaels.com. You could text me at 248-583-1663. YouTube isn't the best way to do it with the comments. I'm not seeming to get those very easily, but check out my website and send me a note through there, or I'll have my email too at the bottom of this YouTube if you're watching YouTube. So, mwah, hang in there. Thanks for being on a spiritual path and being cool. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.